Thank you so much for the invitation. Luckily, I'm not stuck in South Africa because my main tendency is in AI research at ETH Zurich, so that locality saved me a little bit from the unfortunate circumstances our fellow speakers had to endure. But what I want to leave you today is actually, hopefully, with 3 insights. 1, a number, an impact number you might not have heard about. Second, 2 technologies which might be combined you have not thought about, could be combined and provide a solution. And third, how local communities actually can provide impact in deep technology development. So as an AI researcher, it's kind of weird that I'm here speaking with you about conservation, but let me explain. 4 years ago, I had really the great luck to participate in what was back known the United Nations COP23 in Bonn, where they organized a hackathon. So I came straight out of Silicon Valley with working on self-driving cars before and AI algorithms. So I went to that hackathon, which asked basically, how can we use technology to help tackle climate change? And specifically, that hackathon focused on how can we use blockchain. And I was like, wow, that's so much hype here right now. Climate change, blockchain, AI at once. So really, I was a little bit suspicious. But what was more important is what I learned there about one specific thing. And that one thing is forests. So my parents and my family comes from the rainforests of Vietnam. And we know the beauty and pristine of these forests. Over the last 50 years, we have lost half of the world's forests since we measured the trillion trees, and we are going to lose more and more. What you might not know is that deforestation, you have heard that reforestation, planting trees, has the potential of capturing up to 1/3 of carbon if done right. But if done wrong, a tree can turn actually from a carbon sink into a carbon bomb, releasing up to 18% of emissions worldwide. So it's actually, if you consider tropical deforestation as emission source, it's the 3rd largest emission as a country right after China and the US. So it's that much, 18%. So there's no way we can keep Paris without saving our forests. And of course, people know about that. The United Nations know about that. Our governments know about that. So what are we doing? Well, they promised something called results-based payments. So results-based payments is basically a fancy word of saying, the more you keep a forest alive, the more you keep your tree alive, the more we should pay you. And there are programs such as the United Nations Red Plus initiative that promise $25 billion of paying out local communities, which is great, because if a local community can receive incentives, right, for staying and taking care of their land, they don't have to leave. They can create a sustainable business, even change from agriculture into ecotourism. Well, there's one problem. It's nice on paper, but it does not work in practice. Why? Because you have to fulfill one thing. When a local community wants to apply for these funds, or countries, they have to self-report the impact. Well, imagine you're self-reporting how much someone has to reimburse for you, right? So you're basically self-reporting, this is how much deforestation I basically protected, and which would usually be cut down. The governments are gonna get these applications and gonna be suspicious. And they're gonna check. Indonesia applied for their Red Plus funding 10 years ago, and they have only received 10%. Would you really change your living standards when you're not sure if your paycheck comes tomorrow or in 10 years? Of course not. And that, of course, creates another trust concern on the local community side, where why should they change, right? So as an AI researcher, I thought, wait, we have a lot of data about forests, right? We have field-based monitoring, communities who live there. We have satellites who can see it. We nowadays also have genomic monitoring. And if you look at the satellite data I showed you before from Google Earth Engine, you can see that these images are very evolving in certain patterns when deforestation happens. We call them actually fishbone structures. Like when there's human deforestation on a large scale, what a human does, he cuts a long street straight and then side streets. And it looks from a satellite like a fishbone evolving our space. So we developed algorithms in our lab and also back then at the hackathon that could detect these automatic fishbone structures and try to investigate how further can we use AI algorithms to actually create, instead of a self-report, an automated report that can provide you an independent look at it. We can do that for biodiversity. We can implement wildlife cameras into tropical areas where basically this animal walks around and say, okay, there's an elephant, and we can count them and detect them. So that allows us to have a proxy of the measurement of biodiversity itself. So that's great. So we could provide that as a solution instead of having to rely on self-reports, instead of having maybe to hide on what is the actual impact of your deforestation battle. We can use algorithms that are publicly available sources and AI monitoring to scale these things up and actually provide estimates up to near real time. So on the other hand, that would allow us, of course, to have these $25 billion flow maybe efficiently back to local communities. But what we can also do is we can incentivize on the other way around. So the voluntary carbon marketplace currently is at valued at $1 billion, and there's estimate from the European Investment Bank that the shadow price of carbon is going to be up to $800 by 2050, 2080. So this is a huge opportunity for us to create more high valuable tokens that can maybe create a more fluid and liquid market of trading and trusting and emitting carbon itself. And how do we do that? Well, we combine now our solution, which we have developed over the last years, an AI-based monitoring solution, with the blockchain, and create an issue, what we call an NF3. And now a fancy video should play.
The natural world is disappearing fast. Humanity is consciously destroying our planet's life support systems, upon which we all depend, and time is running out. But there is hope. Everywhere, conservationists and local communities are working tirelessly to stop and reverse the damage we're inflicting, but they can't do it alone. So what if we could harness the power of technology to unlock limitless resources for the restoration of nature? GainForest is a cutting-edge decentralized fund. It uses artificial intelligence and blockchain technology to reward sustainable nature stewardship. It works like this. GainForest generates NF3s, unique digital assets that correspond to land areas all over the world. NF3s turn traditional donations into transparent investments. Through smart contracts, anyone can purchase an NF3 by pledging a regular donation to protect and restore these areas. The smart contract then safely stores donations in a decentralized fund. GainForest uses satellite imagery, drone technology, and artificial intelligence to monitor the area and tell us whether nature is thriving. As land is protected and preserved for longer and longer, donations will automatically be unlocked and released to the communities that have been responsible for protecting it. Simultaneously, donors are able to trace the impact of donations whilst their NF3s increase in value as habitats are restored. GainForest will revolutionise the world of conservation. Together, we can fund the protection and restoration of our natural world, preserving it for us and our children.
We're working together with the Kayapo people, which is protecting an area twice the size of the UK in continuous forests in the Amazon. So you have to, this area is a biodiversity paradise. Alone, the single river has 1,500 fish. And if you would burn down this whole area in forest, you would emit more than the US carbon emissions per year. So you can see that our algorithms, which we trained over the years, can emit global maps of emissions on specifically on deforestation. And then we can see what area around it is deforested and what area inside is deforested, as you can see by the colors. And we can use that to create something which was always questionable. What is the additionality of your project, which you can see in the red curve. So as a user, you can select the area you want to compare it with within the area and see, for example, we had a spike in 2017 where we're not sure what happened there. But if you look at the additionality around the area, you can see that there was an hour. Yeah, and the increase of overall deforestation that has nothing to do, or in a strong sense, is lesser correlation with the actual impact of the project. I want to leave you with 2 insights we learned by working with those communities. So it's important to understand that this presentation is not about technology as a savior, because these communities are our saviors. They are our superheroes. 5% of indigenous communities protect 80% of biodiversity. And we learned much more from working with them than actually we help them currently. So one of the things I want to give you as an insight, if you're looking for maybe technology companies to invest in, is they have to have a strong connection to the field. For example, when we initially piloted that project with Kayapo people, we paid every village separately. But then that turns out, they were like, David, that's not how we work as an indigenous society. Because if you pay each village separately, you would steer up competition and would actually discourage this protection of the forest. And in the end, we changed to group-based payments, which actually improved accountability and also efficiency in the payments itself. Currently, we are in talks with the Paraguayan government, which wants to implement this solution on a large-scale forest site in Paraguay, as well as with governments in Brazil. If you want to learn more about our technology, our papers is all publicly available and open source on GainForest.net, as well as on our research site at climateai.org at ETH Zurich. I'm David Dow. Thank you so much for your attention.